All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the SPC public meeting for the 2023-2026 TIP update for PennDOT District 12, which represents the counties of Fayette, Greene, Washington, and Westmoreland. My name is Andy Waple. I'm the Director of Transportation Planning for SPC. So we have a few slides we're going to run through tonight. We want to brief all of you on the progress and the update of our Transportation Improvement Program, which is a 4-year document that outlines the highest priority projects in the 10-county southwestern Pennsylvania region. It's updated every 2 years, so tonight I'm going to talk about current funding and some recently completed projects that have been done over the last few years. I'm then going to hand it to my colleague Ryan Gordon, who's going to talk about the 2023 TIP update development process, as well as some other things going on that are in conjunction with the TIP update. And then he's going to hand it back to me to discuss transportation funding at both the state and federal level. So again, on the line with us this evening, we have representatives from PennDOT District 12, as well as our counties representing that area. Again, Fayette, Greene, Westmoreland, and Washington. This is being recorded for those of you that may want to watch later or may want to pass along to your colleagues or friends or business associates. It will be posted on SPC's YouTube page. So with that, I'm going to dive right into the slides here and talk a little bit about current investments that are going on with the 2021 TIP program. As you can see on the screen, it's about $1.57 billion in total investment over the 4 years, with about a third of that being represented in bridges, $300 million for highways, $157 for safety projects, $185 for operations, and $114 million for multimodal projects and active transportation. Those are things like bus replacements, sidewalk projects, bicycle facilities, bus replacements, things like that. Public transportation investment over the same time period, about $2.23 billion. So a significant amount more than the highway bridge program. The vast majority of that funding is represented by operations and maintenance. About $1.9 billion of that goes to the Port Authority of Allegheny County. They are the largest transit provider in the southwestern Pennsylvania region, and they account for about 95 to 96% of all transit trips in the region. More investments for new buses and passenger vehicles, $358 million for equipment and facility improvements. And then as you can see, we also have a new capacity project in the region at $120 million, and that's the downtown Pittsburgh to Oakland bus rapid transit project, which is currently under construction. We wanted just to apprise everybody of some recently completed projects over the last few years. I'm not going to read through all of these, but just hit some high notes here. Some safety improvements on SR 21 in Fayette County, as well as the Ohio Pile Multimodal Gateway Project, which coincidentally has won several national and state awards for design and for excellence in transportation engineering and construction. In Greene County, we have a number of local bridge replacements, as well as the SR 1016 bridge over Little Whiteley Creek. In Washington County, a number of improvements to I-70, some preservation work, some widening and reconstruction, a bridge replacement, and then several bridge replacements on a few state routes across the county. In Westmoreland County, again, improvements to I-70 at PA 31 interchange. Some improvements to US 119 in New Stanton, improving lighting and ramps, as well as intersection safety improvements on State Route 31 in Donegal. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Ryan Gordon, and he's going to talk us through the 2023-2026 TIP development process.
Thanks, Andy. In the next few slides, I'll be providing an overview of the 2023 TIP update. We're currently right in the middle of numerous activities that are required to produce our pre-draft. And we always like to come out and provide this session as an update, since we're a little more than halfway through this TIP update process. You can see here, a simplified version of a very complicated process. This is just a generalized view of what it takes for over 1.5 years of effort to complete. This process both begins and ends with public involvement. And our overarching key elements to this process are collaboration and the fact that it's consensus driven. I may be the one that's talking about the process right now, but it's important to remember that there's over 90 professionals involved in this process from over 20 different organizations throughout the region, all working together, including oversight from FHWA and FTA, to produce a 4-year program of projects. And you'll see here in the second box, really through the pre-draft TIP, that is the work that's done within our TIP work groups. And within District 12, our TIP work group includes SPC staff, PennDOT District 12 staff and officials, staff from counties Fayette, Greene, Washington, and Westmoreland, and also the transit providers in those areas as well. So thanks goes out to all the people that help us within our TIP work group to really make this TIP process, a collaborative one. This is really an effort that involves a lot of folks. So on this graphic, you'll see that really the work that we're into now is we're at the very end of the development of the pre-draft TIP. So I'll talk a little bit more about this, but where we go from here is we do an environmental justice analysis and a conformity for air quality. And then we do a 30-day public comment period. So I'll be talking about that a little more. Next slide, please. So here we go with the more detailed graphic that shows the TIP development timeline. Let's see if it's going to come up here. Well, I think it's just a little lag time there on that advance, but
oh, there we go. Ryan's back. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, so next slide, please. Did you lose me?
Yeah, we lost you. I filled in, but you're back.
Yeah, I was just talking away. So this is really the detailed timeline, and this is what we use within our TIP work group. And so I'm not going to go over all this, but I just wanted to get the point across that there's a lot of interrelated items here. You can see the banner across the top there on public involvement. We have this kind of middle zone there where we have all of our different TIP development milestones. That's how we keep track of it between the folks that work on the inside on this stuff, when we need to get what done. And then you'll see at the bottom there the activities of the TIP work group and how many meetings we actually do have. We've had 12 TIP work group meetings across the region in our 3 districts, including I think we're going into our 5th meeting in PennDOT District 12. We'll have 3 or 4 meetings yet to come, and it's all at this point getting to that orange box that says pre-draft tip by the end of the calendar year. So next slide, please. So as you may notice that the tip process really involved a lot of public engagement throughout. The process begins with public engagement through our committees and our notifications that we send out through various sources. We make aware everybody of the STC 45-day comment period that's held in the spring. And this is an opportunity for really anyone to provide input through that format. And it's a really good format of a survey and then a mapping element that allows people to put their comments into the map. So from that comment period, we received over 600 comments in the SPC region. And we also gather input from our various meetings and from the comment periods we have, like we would have had for the 2021 tip update in our comment period. So we gather a lot of comments from past meetings or things that come in through our website or our email. We take all these comments, we look at all of them, we organize them, and we discuss them within our tip work group meeting at the second tip work group meeting. And we take these comments under consideration, we discuss them, and we assign a status to them. And so, like I said, it's a lot of looking at these comments and really considering them. So next slide, please. So wanted to provide, a little bit of a look of on the funding trends. And you'll see here in this graphic that we're comparing where we were in the 2015 tip to where we are now with the 2023 tip and the amount of revenue we have to work with in our base funding. So looking at the highway bridge side, you can see, that's that blue bar, and you can see a concerning downward trend, I'll say. This funding just between where we are in the 23 tip and comparing just back to the 21 tip, we're down 14% across the region. This is mostly driven by the state's decision to increase the funding going to the interstate. So that kind of decreases our funding we have to work with at the regional level a little bit. And really, it's the key category of money that we have for our national highway system, and it's the funding category of NHPP. But if you look just at the NHPP funding that we have available, you'll see that we're down about 30% in just that one funding type. So overall, this downward trend's got us really back to pre-Act 89 levels of funding. We'll be talking here in a few slides here about the infrastructure bill that's been passed and what that may mean for Pennsylvania. And Andy's going to give an overview of that here when we get towards the end. But we will see some relief with some additional federal funds coming our way. But we have yet to get all that into the program, obviously. So next slide, please. So just a real overview here on our federal and state funding mix. And of course, this tip is a mixture of different types of funding, federal and state. And at the federal level, the act that really funded the last several tips was the FAST Act. It had recently expired and has been replaced by a new Transportation Authorization Act called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This was just signed by the president yesterday. It's been hot and heavy in the news for several weeks. So like I said, Andy will be providing a little bit of an overview in terms of what this might mean for Pennsylvania and increased federal transportation funds. At the state level, I talked about, the 14% drop in our region for all funding. But there is a good chunk of that's due to our decrease in state funds. And that's really impacted by COVID and, you know, the ability to collect the gas tax revenues. So if you look at the entire state, you know, we're about $152 million less in state gas tax receipts due to the COVID pandemic. So consequently, you know, with our state funding coming in the region being down, you know, it's that just looking at just that, you know, it's down about 20% on just the state bridge funding. So another point we wanted to make, you know, is that the state continues to prioritize interstate investment. The next slide, I'm going to cover that a little bit more detail. And then some formula updates that really prioritize the way that we fund our project mix. It really allows for an increased emphasis on what we call preservation treatments, or, you know, just keeping good roads good and good bridges good through these preservation treatments. So next slide, please. So, I mean, I mentioned a few times about, you know, the interstate and the amount of money that's going to it. It's kind of at the expense of what we would normally have in our regional base fund. So I don't think anyone would, you know, dispute the importance of, you know, investing in the interstates, and it's really a big economic driver. The interstates account for 26% of all traffic in Pennsylvania, but really over 57% of the interstate is over 40 years old. So the situation isn't good from an investment standpoint. We're trying to catch up on kind of, you know, deferred maintenance on some of this stuff. And we're really not alone. It's not a situation that's unique to Pennsylvania. I think it's, you know, it's just really a nationwide problem. But there's tremendous amount of funding needed to keep interstates, you know, in a state of good repair, and even more funding if you're looking to do modernization of the interstate system. So the performance measures that we have will continue to prioritize investment in interstate. You know, and that may come at the expense of that lower level network in terms of the condition of the system. So next slide, please. So speaking of performance measures, we wanted to make the note here that, you know, SPC in partnership with, you know, PennDOT and the USDOT have been really developing a comprehensive performance-based planning and programming process. We're integrating this into our consideration into our TIP update and the way that we look at projects, the way that we come up with candidate projects. So when the TIP document, you know, comes out in May, we'll have an entire chapter that's dedicated to reporting on the current status of the performance measures in the region, things like safety, bridge assets, roadway asset conditions, and really overall system performance with congestion and reliability, and even some transit performance measures. So we'll have a very detailed account of what the TIP does to make progress towards our federal performance measures and our federal targets. And I'd encourage you to check these measures out in more detail on our website. You can see this is just a snapshot of a page of our website that really goes into detail on these regional performance measures. So next slide, please. So, you know, even though our funding is down, even though we're kind of on a downward trend there, you know, projects will continue to advance. It's just maybe not at the rate that we would all like to see, or the rate that we prefer. So really many of the projects that are shown here will continue to advance. So I have this slide and the next slide are really projects that are going to continue to advance on the TIP, but it's likely going to be in pre-construction phases. We're probably going to need to be pushing out the construction a little bit, and they may slide a year or two into what we, like I said, what we would really prefer to see. So from what would really be ideal, you know. So keep in mind, these projects shown on this slide and the next one, you know, these are not new projects. These are all projects that are already on the tip, and they are going to continue to advance in some phase or another. But there's really nothing new here. We're not really you know, adding any new projects here so far. So next slide, please. And this is just some more of the same for Washington and Westmoreland. These are projects that, you know, are moving in, but like I said, they're not moving in an ideal rate. And like I said, again, no new projects here shown on these lists. So next slide, please. So when we're looking at the funding shortfalls, like the ones I discussed earlier, you know, there are really going to be impacts to projects. Like I said, the projects aren't going to be advancing in the years that we might like to see them. We're going to have to push things out and stretch things out from a cash flow standpoint. And so we're looking, you know, at how much funding it'll take to continue just the projects that we have on the current tip. And that's also known as carryover projects. So if you compare our carryover projects to what we have available on the regional tip funds, you'll see the shortfalls, you know, that are shown there in those red numbers. So that's just to continue to deliver on what's on our current 4-year program. So you can see that puts us in a big hole across our districts and in the region and at large. So there's going to be impacts on some of our bigger projects. And you can see we've noted a couple of the bigger ones that are in District 12 here. And you know, there's going to be some significant, you know, impacts here on these projects. We're going to be likely pushing construction further out than it's ideal for sure. And as we work through that, we'll have a complete listing of that once we finalize, you know, our project list in the way that, you know, it's actually gonna be programmed. So next slide, please. The other thing that we want everybody to realize is, you know, a big chunk of this tip is public transit. So on the transit side, there's just under $2 billion for the region in tip funding that allows projects to continue to advance. And on the transit side, from a regional perspective, that, you know, that includes things like the Pittsburgh to Oakland BRT, the light rail system within Pittsburgh, the bus systems in each of the counties, and really all the maintenance and operation of those fixed skyways. So here's a slide that shows, you know, in Fayette and Greene and Mid-Mon Valley, you know, what are some of the investments that this tip's going to make in transit in those areas. And you can see it's a lot of operating assistance. It's a lot of, you know, upgrading in equipment and even upgrading in facilities. And then, of course, just the regular maintenance of the buses and maybe some replacement of buses. So that gives you an idea in what the tip projects are going to be in those areas. And then this slide is the same thing in Washington and Westmoreland. It's the same type of stuff here, you know, replacing buses, providing operating funding, and some, you know, upgrades to facilities and then maintenance. So next slide, please. So I wanted to drill down deeper on a couple of related specialty programs that we deal with that are upcoming, you know, tasks that we're actively working on. So when you look at SPC, we have several competitive funding programs, and two of them we're working actively right now on. And one of those is the Congestion and Mitigation and Air Quality Program, or CMAQ, and the Transportation Alternatives Program, or TA. So you can see here the status. We've completed the application periods a while back for these. We're in the kind of candidate project evaluation stage right now. On the CMAQ side, we've got 16 candidate projects to around about $47 million in total ask. We've got approximately 35 million available that we can add new projects to our program. And like I said, we're currently underway with our project evaluation, and we'll be coming out with the selected projects in December. On the TA side, it's a very similar time frame. We have 12 candidate projects, around about $7 million requested. We're going to be anywhere from 3 to 3.5 million available, and we're in the same status of our project evaluation that's underway, and we will be coming out with what the selections for that program are also in December. So that'll give us the projects that have been successful in being selected and being approved for funding from those two programs for the 23 to 26 TIP. Next slide, please. So this is just a reminder that we're constantly working with PennDOT, and they are the leaders in conducting the PennDOT Connects process. It's something that's overall been beneficial to municipalities as well as PennDOT and SPC. All projects that are on the TIP go through this process of really early interaction and early information gathering with local officials on what are the local conditions and the local context that allow PennDOT to design projects that kind of meet those needs and can really fit in and serve the communities as best they can. So there's a list of a few of the areas that are discussed during the PennDOT Connects process and outreach. And it's everything from pedestrian bike facilities all the way through just knowing what's going on in the communities. Are there events planned in the area? What other operations or freight are in the area? And it's just a way to get to know those local conditions better, and we can really design projects with that intel. So next slide, please. So just wanted to touch on the remaining schedule for the 2023 to 2026 TIP update, and this is really everything we're doing to get to that TIP adoption in June. What the commission will be considering adoption at the June commission meeting. So really in the fall here, we're going to complete our last few TIP work group meetings, and we will be submitting our pre-draft, our pre-draft TIP for consideration, and then we'll be providing these meetings that we're doing now along with a briefing to the commission in December. Well, once we switch over to the spring, we'll be going through our central office PennDOT review, and then we'll be able to complete our air quality conformity documentation, as well as our environmental justice analysis and documentation. And then we will prepare our TIP document, and we'll put the TIP document out in May for a formal 30-day public comment period. And we'll be doing something similar in the way of public involvement and public meetings. And like I said, it gets us to June, where the commission will be considering adoption of the 2023 TIP, and then in October, at the beginning of the federal fiscal year, we'll switch over to the 2023 TIP will take effect. So that's what I have for you all today in terms of update on the process. Like I said, we're more than halfway through here, and we like to, give everybody a briefing at this point. So I'm going to turn it over to Andy because there's a lot of really funding related, things going on right now, and he can provide an update and some highlights of some of the things that are going on out there. So I'll turn it back to you, Andy. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so as Ryan said, I'm just going to talk really briefly about some things going on at both the state and federal levels to help us address our shortfalls within transportation funding. So everybody's well aware, it's been all over the news the past week or so. Yesterday, the president signed into law the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And what that does, at least for transportation, it's a very broad infrastructure act that addresses a number of different things: water and sewer, broadband, high-speed rail, passenger rail, a lot of different things, both transportation and non-transportation related as it pertains to infrastructure. But for this evening, we're going to focus on really on highways and bridges and public transportation. So what it does is it provides $350 billion nationally over 5 years for highways and bridges, and about $91 billion over 5 years for public transportation. Within that, there's a new $27.5 billion bridge program. There's a lot of money for electrical vehicle charging infrastructure, and just a whole host of different types of programs that address things like climate change and resiliency, and a lot of the discretionary programs that we were very familiar with in the past, that provide funding for large projects that we're unable to fund through our traditional TIP program. Things like, for example, in this region, the Pittsburgh to downtown Pittsburgh to Oakland Bus Rapid Transit project at $120 million was a federal discretionary project, as well as about $45 million up on State Route 228 in Butler County was secured for additional funding through discretionary programs. So this program is really this Jobs Act and Highway Authorization Program is a really big jump. It's about $100 billion more than the FAST Act, which was passed back in 2015. So it's going to provide some well-needed relief to the transportation projects that Ryan talked about being potentially pushed back a little bit, and help to remedy that $566 million number that we're down just in existing projects. One of the things, though, however, that's the good part of this. The bad part of the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act does not provide a long-term revenue solution to the Highway Trust Fund. So the Highway Trust Fund has had issues for many, many years. The Highway Trust Fund is funded primarily by the federal gas tax, which stands since 1993 at 18.4 cents a gallon. So us in Pennsylvania, we pay a state gas tax, and we also pay a federal gas tax. The state gas tax is larger than the federal. That was last raised in 2013 as part of Act 89. But the federal portion that funds the National Highway Program hasn't been raised since 1993. So if you think about 18.4 cents in 1993, that has the buying power right now of about 10 cents a gallon. So to fix that insolvency in the Highway Trust Fund, Congress has been moving funds out of the general fund to fill the hole. So and this bill is no different. During the FAST Act, it was about a $70 billion transfer. And with the IIJA, it's about a $118 billion transfer from the general fund to the Highway Trust Fund. As you can see there, it's about $90 billion to highways and about $28 billion to transit. And again, this isn't a solution. This while it does provide a good boost in funding that is sorely needed, it will not meet all of our unmet needs across the state and across the nation. As Ryan said, that we have, Pennsylvania is not unique in needing to almost completely rebuild its interstate highway system. This is a national issue. It's gone for a very long time without full reconstruction. If you think back, the interstate highway system was built in the 50s and 60s, and the tail end of it, some of it in the 70s. That's 40, 50, 60 years ago. Those highways were not designed to live that long, and they were not designed to carry the traffic that they carry now. So many parts of those are in need of serious reconstruction of bridges and roadway pavements and interchanges. And also to one thing to keep in mind, when those federal funds come into the state of Pennsylvania, and every state in the nation, as a matter of fact, they need to be matched. Typically, federal programs need a 20% match. So in order for us to leverage this $351 billion nationally, and what it means for Pennsylvania, about an extra $4 billion in new funds for the state of Pennsylvania, we're going to need to raise about $1 billion in state funds just to match those. So we're going to have some problems if the legislature can't come up with something to plug the hole in the state revenues, because of COVID and because of vehicles becoming more fuel efficient and electric vehicles that don't pay anything into the system. We're going to need to come up with something to at the very least match the new federal money that's coming in. So with that said, as it stands right now, Pennsylvania receives about $1.8 billion a year in highway and bridge funds, and about $425 million a year in federal transit formula funds. So this act will provide about $4 billion in new funds to the highway and bridge programs, about 2.3 in formula funds. So those are the funds that get distributed to all the planning regions across the Commonwealth, such as us, and about 1.6 billion in the new bridge program that I discussed on the last slide. And then also about 208 million a year in new federal transit funds. So as you can see, again, it provides a much needed boost in funding, but it's not an end all be all. We still need to come up with some solutions at the state level. And to do that, over the past year, the State Transportation Commission and the governor and the legislature have produced a couple of reports that outline a number of options for raising state funds. So the Transportation Revenue Options Commission was tasked by the governor to develop a strategy to look at all of the multimodal needs across Pennsylvania and to come up with a multi-staged approach to systematically address those funding issues. Again, right now, just like the federal level, the majority of Pennsylvania's transportation funds comes from wholesale gas tax, as well as vehicle registration fees and taxes on new vehicles and things like that. So again, with vehicles becoming fuel efficient, people using electric vehicles, we're not realizing the gas tax revenues that we had been in the past and that were projected during Act 89 when it was adopted in 2013. Also, when it was adopted in 2013, a couple more things. One, it was not indexed to inflation. So again, you all have known what inflation's been doing over the past few months here, and in terms of consumer goods and groceries and clothes and just about everything. It's doing the same to gas. So we're losing about $100 million a year in buying power because the gas tax, when it was first written into the legislation in 2013, wasn't indexed to inflation. Secondly, when Act 89 was passed back in 2013, there was a provision in there that a large amount of funding was going to go to the Pennsylvania State Police every year. So that maxed out, I believe, a few years ago at almost $800 million a year. No disputing the Pennsylvania State Police are very critical and very important to all of us, and they should be funded, but is the gas tax the right way to fund them? People people have a lot of varying opinions about that. Right now, there's been measures taken in the legislature to draw down that. It's being drawn down by 4% every year until it hits a threshold of $500 million where it'll plateau. So as of now, there's no plans and nothing that's being passed through legislation at this moment to transfer that $500 million plateau every year coming out of the motor license fund to fund the state police. So $500 million a year can do a lot of things for us on the transportation side. So with that, the committee was tasked at developing a three-phase approach, that looks at a whole host of different funding mechanisms, from short to medium to long-term, things like tolling and user fees, so doing away with the gas tax and doing like a mileage-based fee, redirecting the Pennsylvania State Police funds, fees on things like vehicle registrations, additional fees, making sure electric vehicles pay their fair share into the system, looking at fees on car rentals and leases, fees on transportation network companies such as Uber and Lyft. So every time you would get a ride with Uber or Lyft, you would pay a fee that would go into the motor license fund, and also fees and taxes on delivery. So they're looking at a number of options to help to plug the hole, none of which have been acted on yet. These are only recommendations. And I will note that this report and also the alternative funding study report that you see on the screen right now are both available on the State Transportation Commission website. So the PennDOT alternative funding study, it drills a little bit deeper down into the Revenue Options Commission study and really starts to analyze the different types of recommendations and what kind of fee tolls and what kind of revenues that each of these may realize. So it's basically, looking at again the three-phase approach. The short term being bridge tolling and the possibility of managed lanes. Managed lanes are things like, they're called high occupancy toll lanes. If you've traveled around Washington, D.C. or in Florida or in Texas, they're all over those places around Washington, D.C. I-66, I-495 and 395, as well as I-95, all have managed lanes. So these are lanes that you can go in like toll lanes. Basically, if you have more than 2 or 3 vehicles in your car, you ride free. But if you are alone or have underneath the threshold, you pay a varying rate toll, which means depending on the time of the day and how much congestion is out on the roadway, it'll fluctuate the toll rate. So you can pay anywhere from a few cents every mile to a few dollars every mile to use these lanes. The medium term is something called congestion pricing. Again, works much like the managed lanes, but is on the general lanes. So it would be on all of the interstates, not just, or a segment of interstate, some interstate, not just certain lanes. The higher the congestion and depending on the time of day, the higher the rate would be. And then finally, the long-term solutions that are being looked at are what I alluded to earlier, the mileage-based user fee. So the phase out of the gas tax. So, the technology is not quite there yet to see how that would actually work. It's our understanding that's probably, maybe 5 to 8 years away to have the technology to implement this thing on a nationwide basis. A number of states, including Pennsylvania, are testing this on a pilot program. So one of the ways it could work, there's a few examples on ways it could work. One would be for example, you would punch your mileage in every time you get gas, and you would be assessed a fee depending on how many miles you drove. Or it could be like a USB stick or a little plug-in that goes into your ODB port underneath your dash that would transmit how many miles you're driven, and you would get a bill in the mail every month or every quarter or something like that. So those are just a few examples on the way those types of things can work. And those are, a more of a long-term solution in phasing out the gas tax, because, as we've discussed and everybody knows, the vehicles are going to keep getting more and more efficient. There's a push at the federal level to have all vehicles become electric by the 2030s. So obviously the gas tax is no longer the answer in the way to generate revenues for transportation. So one of the short-term things that I'm sure you've all heard about is the PennDOT public-private partnership to toll a select number of interstate bridges across the Commonwealth. There's 9 candidates overall, as you can see here on the map. We have one in the SPC region, that is letter I. It's on I79 near the Bridgeville Interchange. As you all are very well aware, I'm sure, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this project. It was just in the newspaper this week that Bridgeville Borough, as well as North Collier Township and South Fayette Township are actually suing PennDOT because of this. There's a lot of concern among elected leadership in the legislature, as well as the municipalities and the residents of these areas, on what this could potentially do to one, the local roadways. If you're familiar with that area, it's very congested already. And two, basically they're worried about people diverting off of the Interstate 79 and coming through these communities to avoid the toll. Also, the concern is, that the local residents are bearing the brunt of the fees here, as a lot of these residents use this road very heavily to get to work, or to get to school, or to get places that they may use it 3-4 times a day in their everyday lives. I will say, you can see there on the right-hand screen, there's a map. There's a number of elements to this project, including widening of I-79, improvements to the Bridgeville Interchange, as well as some bridge replacements over Chartiers Creek and the railroad. As of now, this project is moving forward, being a toll project. If for some reason it does not go forward as a toll project, PennDOT will still be pursuing this project. It's a very good project. It's very well needed. There's a lot of congestion in that area. Bridgeville Interchange was never designed to handle the amount of traffic that's on there now. If it does not toll, it will be moved forward, but it'll just take a lot longer, with an estimated cost of $100 to $150 million. So as of now, PennDOT is looking at beginning design for this project, and they're also holding workshops. They held one about a month ago in South Fayette Township, looking at local impacts, going out and talking to the municipalities, talking to police officers and school bus drivers, and folks that travel that roadway all the time, and all those roadways within those municipalities, to learn their perspectives and to look at impacts that may come as a result of diversion off the interstate. So they're working through the design process and working through some of the things that are concerning the folks in those municipalities and in those areas regarding the project. So that's really all we had today. I want to thank all of you on the line, our county representatives, our PennDOT representatives, for attending with us. I want to thank everybody watching via Facebook Live. First, I want to turn it over to any of our PennDOT representatives or any of our county representatives that would like to say anything before we have Jared open up and read the questions from Facebook Live. So does anybody in any of the counties want to say anything, or anybody from PennDOT District 12, anything for the good of the order?
Andy, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. These are exciting meetings. I feel like they're exciting anyways. It's really nice to see people show up and take an interest in transportation funding and projects across the region.
Great, thank you, Angela. That was Angela Saunders from PennDOT District 12. And I echo Angela's thoughts. Ideally, we would like to be out. You know, typically when we do these, we do one public meeting in each one of our counties. And that's how we really like getting out to the counties. We like getting out and talking to folks in their backyards and really learning what the issues are. And hopefully in May, when we do this again, we'll be able to come out and meet with everybody face to face and get out and talk to everybody, because we miss seeing you guys. Anybody else would like to say anything?
Hey, Andy, this is Jeremy. Hey, I would just like to not only echo what Angela has to say, but I want to thank PennDOT District 12 and the individuals at SPC that take the time, the energy, and effort, and the hard work that you guys put into doing this. I know it's not good news that you have to go out and give, but you guys always do it professionally and in a way that I think the general public understands it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. And that was Jeremy Kelly, Greene County.
Yeah,
this is Rachel Duda. I just want to, before Bill speaks, sorry, Bill, I'll let you go next. Just wanted to say that where the funding falls for construction, it is what it is, but District 12 is going to continue to get projects ready and keep them on the shelf until the funding is available so that they're ready to let it at any moment's notice. Go ahead, Bill, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Rachel.
That's fine. Yeah, I'll add to what Angela and Rach said for PennDOT. Thanks everyone for participating, and I think Andy did an excellent job of pointing out all the challenges with funding and you know, all the transportation funding challenges we're dealing with. Obviously, there's not nearly as much funding available as we have needs, and that's a challenge we deal with all the time. And as you pointed out, the additional federal funds that are coming as a result of the recently signed bill will certainly help. But as you also pointed out, it's not the overall solution, because it's not sustainable. It's a 5-year program, and we really do need to see some sustainable type funding as well, that you know, that will long-term planning and getting a lot of projects out there and available to go to construction. So, but it's a good start, and we're certainly looking forward to the extra money. As you also pointed out, we don't really have the exact financial guidance on it yet, so I'm sure we'll be making a lot of adjustments to our program as we move forward. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to you to get to the questions.
No, that was Bill Kovach, the district executive for PennDOT District 12. And yeah, Bill's exactly right. You know, even though the bill was signed into law yesterday, you know, it's going to take US DOT and Congress quite some time to, you know, write the program guidance and write the rules and everything. You know, there was quite a few new programs introduced as a part of this bill. So, you know, with anything in the federal government, it's going to take a while for them to write the guidance for those bills and write the guidance for how the funds should be used. So we're anticipating moving on our current TIP schedule of adoption at the end of June, knowing that you know, sometime in the spring or even right after adoption, we might be you know, what we might the funding may come out, and we may be right back in here you know, making major adjustments to the program. But you know, as Bill said, it is what it is, and we'll address it when it comes. But we just, for now, you know, we have to move forward with our current schedule. If there's nothing else from the group on, I will ask Jared. Jared, is there any questions in the chat?
Yes, just one. It's just a question about when will municipalities know if their candidate projects have made it to the next step in the TIP process?
Yeah, so we will have a draft document out probably early May. And again, you know, depending on what comes out and what the timing that comes out, you know, with the federal legislation, that's going to introduce a little wrinkle at some point in our process. So, but we'll have the draft, our draft out on its regular schedule in May. So that's when everybody will be able to see which projects are included in the draft program as it stands at that point. And again, you know, with the extra funding coming in, we may have the capacity to add a few new projects to begin design and in some of the outer years of the program, but I'm not anticipating that we're going to have a lot of capacity for a lot of new projects. We always like to, at the end of the last 2 years of every TIP, we like to program in new projects that you know, you can have some design in the pipeline, so you can always kind of keep the machine rolling and keeping projects in the pipeline to be developed and to be delivered in subsequent TIPs. As of now, there probably won't be too many of those, maybe a few small projects, and then, you know, once we realize what kind of funding we're going to get in this region as a result of the new federal bill, then maybe a few more will be added, but it's not going to be a windfall of new projects. Okay, so I guess if that's it, again, want to thank everybody for their time. I want to thank everybody for joining us out on Facebook Live. And all of our partners from Greene, Fayette, Westmoreland, and Washington counties, as well as PennDOT District 12. And again, this will be available on SPC's YouTube page for anybody that you know, that's attending out there live. If you have some colleagues or friends or family members, you know, please pass this along. It's available to see, and we're always taking public comments. We have a public comment form on our website that you can fill out with project ideas or any general comments that you may have for anything that we've went over or anything that you see on our website. So feel free to give us any comments you may have and any thoughts, and we will certainly use them. So with that, thank you, everybody, and that concludes our meeting for this evening.
Thank you, Andy.